There is a type of player that Germany produces better than almost any other country in the world. The disciplined, physical central midfielder, intelligent in recovery and precise in passing. The player who does not need to shine individually because he understands that the team is more than the sum of its parts. Germany has given the world Beckenbauer, Matthäus, Ballack, Schweinsteiger. Players who won because the system worked, because the structure was perfect, because nobody stepped outside the shape even if that meant sacrificing spectacle. Florian Wirtz is none of those players. And that, precisely, is what makes him so special for Germany right now. Wirtz was born on the 3rd of May 2003 in Pulheim, a town of around 50,000 inhabitants in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, a few kilometers from Cologne. A quiet, orderly town without the noise and pace of Germany's great cities. A town where growing up is, in many respects, a relatively sheltered experience. But football, as always, had its own plans for that boy, who from a very young age began to show that his relationship with the ball was something that did not fit easily into any known category. His father, Hans Joachim Wirtz, had been an amateur footballer. His mother, Marianne, also had connections to sport. Football was not unfamiliar to that family. But what Florian showed from his earliest years in the Cologne Academy was something that went beyond family heritage or systematic training. There was a creativity in him, a capacity to improvise, to solve problems on the pitch in ways nobody had anticipated, that was more reminiscent of the great dribblers of Southern European football than the classic German midfielders. At Cologne, he learned, he grew. And when Bayer Leverkusen, the club from the neighbouring city, came knocking, the Wirtz family made a decision that in retrospect seems obvious, but at the time required conviction. To cross the invisible boundary between two rival cities, to go where the development project was more promising. At Leverkusen, Florian Wirtz found the environment where his talent could flourish without the constraints of a system that was too rigid. He made his Bundesliga debut on the 18th of May 2020. He was 17 years old and 14 days. He became the youngest player in Bayer Leverkusen's history to debut. But it was not just the debut that attracted attention. It was the way he debuted, with naturalness, with that apparent ease that truly gifted players have, as if the most demanding stage was simply another space to do what they had always done. He scored in his second match. At 17, in the Bundesliga, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. All of Germany began to pay attention. The media started talking about the next great German player. Comparisons with Müller, with Özil, with the great creative players in Die Mannschafts's recent history began to circulate. And Wirtz, with that quiet maturity that defines him, kept playing without being swept away by the noise. Training, learning, building, match by match, the version of himself he wanted to become. And then, on the 27th of March 2022, the hardest moment of his young life arrived. In a Bundesliga match against Cologne, the club where he had grown up, Wirtz suffered a complete tear of the anterior cruciate ligament in his left knee. One of the most feared injuries in football, an injury that interrupts careers, changes trajectories, tests not only the body but the mind and character of whoever suffers it. He was 18 years old. He had spent fewer than 2 seasons in the first team and was already considered one of the most promising players in Europe. And suddenly, everything stopped. Recovery from a torn anterior cruciate ligament typically takes between 8 and 12 months. It is a long, painful, and psychologically exhausting process. There are days when the body responds and days when it does not. There are moments of hope and moments of doubt. You have to learn to be patient in a sport where speed is almost everything. You have to trust in a process that does not always advance in a straight line. Wirtz went through that process with a composure that surprised everyone around him. His coaches at Leverkusen, the medical staff, his teammates all said the same thing, that the boy did not seem to sink, that he kept his head, that he arrived at the training ground each day with the same attitude he had before the injury. It was not denial. It was not that it did not affect him. It was something closer to an inner clarity, a certainty that this setback was part of the road and that the road continued forward. He returned to playing in January 2023, and he came back different. Not different in a bad sense, not more limited or more cautious. Different in the sense that something during that recovery period, in those months of silence and invisible work, had settled in him in a way that was visible on the pitch. He was more complete, more aware. He made better decisions. The creativity remained intact, the speed of execution too. But now there was an additional layer of maturity that made everything flow with a consistency that had previously been intermittent and was now constant. The 2023-24 season was the confirmation of everything. Under the guidance of Xabi Alonso, the Basque former midfielder who arrived at Leverkusen without top-level managerial experience and transformed the team into a football-playing machine, Bayer Leverkusen did something it had never done in its 120 years of history: win the Bundesliga. And not just win it unbeaten. The entire season, 34 league matches, without losing a single one. An achievement that in modern football, with the level of competition that exists, is so extraordinary that it is difficult to process even after it has happened. Wirtz was the heart of that team. Not the only talent, because Alonso's Leverkusen had extraordinary players in every position, but the one who most clearly embodied the philosophy of play Alonso had implemented: high press, clean ball circulation, quick transitions, and creativity in tight spaces. Wirtz was the one who connected midfield with attack, who found the pass nobody else saw, who with a feint or a turn opened spaces where a second earlier there had been none. He ended the season with 17 goals and 20 assists across all competitions. For a 20-year-old midfielder, those numbers are almost indecent. In the German national team, Wirtz arrived with the expectations that always come when a talent of that caliber emerges. Germany had gone through difficult years: elimination in the group stage at the Russia 2018 World Cup, another group stage exit at Qatar 2022, a cycle of renewal that was necessary but painful. Die Mannschaft, the national team that for decades was synonymous with efficiency and deep tournament runs, needed a new narrative. It needed a player who would restore excitement, who would remind the country that German football could be beautiful, not only effective. Wirtz arrived to be that player. At Euro 2024, played at home in front of their own supporters, Germany showed glimpses of what it can be with him as the central figure. It was not enough to win the tournament, but it was enough for the country to see in that young-faced, easy-smiling number 10 the promise of something better. The promise of a German football that not only wins, but also captivates. The 2026 World Cup is the great appointment. For Germany, which has not lifted the World Cup since Brazil 2014, the drought has now lasted 12 years. For a nation that has won 4 world titles and considers football part of its cultural identity, that is not just a statistic, it is a wound. And Florian Wirtz, 23 years old at that tournament, is the person the country looks to for that wound to begin healing. It is hard not to think about the symmetry of history when observing Wirtz's trajectory. A boy born in 2003, the year Germany reached the World Cup final. Raised in the shadow of the great German teams of the 90s and 2000s, who suffered the most feared injury precisely when he was about to take off, and who came back from that injury to become, at 20 years old, the best player in the German league. As if each obstacle had been necessary for him to arrive at the exact place where he now stands. Xabi Alonso, who knows him better than anyone from their daily sessions at Leverkusen, once said something about Wirtz worth remembering. He said that what surprises him most is not the technique or the decision-making speed, though both are extraordinary. What surprises him most is the calm, the capacity to keep a cool head when the match gets complicated, when the pressure rises, when the stadium demands and the opponent presses. That calm, Alonso said, is the hardest thing to teach. And Wirtz has it naturally, as if he were born with it. In a sport where nerves can destroy in an instant everything that talent built with patience, that calm is not a minor detail. It is perhaps the most valuable quality of all. Florian Wirtz does not shout when he scores. He does not perform elaborate celebrations. He does not need external drama because everything interesting about him happens inside, in that mind which processes the game, at a speed that his feet then translate with a precision that feels almost handcrafted. He is the type of player who makes people wonder how it is possible for someone to see so much, decide so quickly, and execute so well all at the same time. Germany is waiting for him. A country that learned to win with efficiency now wants to learn to win with beauty. And that quiet boy from Pulheim, who got injured when everyone was watching and came back when nobody could stop watching, might be exactly the person to show them how.